A very good afternoon to all our guests, Srimati Menka Gandhi and Ms. Gauri Maulekhi, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, Vice Chancellor, Uttaranchal University, Professor Dr. Poonam Rawat Ma'am, Principal at Law College, Dehradun, Dr. V. Bhubaneshwari, Associate Professor at Law College, Dehradun, the organizers and the participants of today's lecture. We have gathered here today to learn about a traditionally lesser discussed socio-legal topic in which discussions have recently started. The topic of today's webinar is animal rights and welfare provisions, and we have with us two esteemed guests who have contributed immensely to the same cause. Now I take this opportunity to invite Dr. V. Bhubaneshwari, Associate Professor, Law College, Dehradun, who has graciously agreed to moderate today's national webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for your warm welcome, Ms. Anna. With the permission of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, I would like to begin the session.
Please,
Shall I begin, sir?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Quoted by Dalai Lama. Yes, the topic of today's webinar is animal rights with focus on protection and welfare laws. And this is Dr. Bhubaneshwari, Associate Professor, Law College, Dehradun, Faculty of Uttaranchal University. Welcoming you all on behalf of Moot Court Society of Law College, Dehradun. A warm welcome to all. At the outset, I would like to take the honor of introducing our keynote speaker and dignitary of the day. She has an admirable track record of being an 8-term member of parliament, a veteran politician who has adeptly navigated the Indian political system to build a formidable reputation as an astute legislator and administrator. Her impressive performance in public service is distinctly apparent from the series of progressive legislations introduced during her successful tenure as Union Minister for Women and Child Development. Under her leadership, the Women and Child Development Ministry contributed to the evolving narrative of gender politics in India by championing an extended maternity leave of 26 weeks for working women through the introduction of the Maternity Benefit Act 2017. The POCSO Act 2012 was made more effective by removing the time limit for reporting child sexual offenses, thereby empowering victims of sexual abuse to come forward and seek justice. A comprehensive campaign against female infanticide and gender discrimination was also launched by her through Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. She is the founder of People for Animals, the largest welfare organization of the country, started in the year 1992. Under her tutelage, the organization engages in the strategy of training and sensitizing judicial magistrates and police personnel about animal welfare laws in India and to make it more effective on the ground. Inclusion of animal law in the syllabi of law colleges by the Bar Council of India reflects the efforts of the organization. Numerous well-researched, engaging and informative editorial pieces on animal welfare in leading national dailies display her spectacular writing skills. Her creative pursuits have also generated authorship over a number of books, reaching out to an eclectic audience of children and adults alike, displayed in her books like Plant Mythology, Animal Activism, and Laws and Many more. Her stalwart contribution and commitment to animals and environment has earned her international awards and acclaim. Some of the awards bestowed on her include Lord Erskine Award from RSPCA 1992, Environmentalist and Vegetarian of the Year 1994, Prani Mitra Award 1996, Venu Menon Animal Allies Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award 1999, International Women's Association Women of the Year Award Chennai 2001. She continues to nurture a legacy that is deeply entrenched in public service and endeavors to win the hearts of the people of Sultanpur constituency. The mission to create inspiring benchmark stands in public service and animal welfare will always be defining hallmarks associated with the name of our honorable guest of the day, Srimati Menka Gandhi ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would like to take the privilege of inviting our second keynote speaker of the day, Ms. Gauri Moleki. Ms. Gauri Moleki is a trustee of India's largest animal welfare organization, People for Animals, and member secretary of the Organization for the State of Uttarakhand, which is the legal and policy wing of its parent organization. Ms. Moleki has contributed to animal welfare in various capacities since the year 1994, serving as a resource person and trainer for the state of police of more than 8 states, and has held workshops on animal welfare at the National Judicial Academy Bhopal and at the State Judicial Academies of Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Himachal Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh. Due to her untiring efforts in seeking judicial intervention of courts, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Rules 2017 and the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Rules 2018 were notified by the Government of India. She has also worked with various ministries of the Government of India and several state governments to formulate and implement policies for the welfare and protection of animals. Ms. Moleki was awarded the prestigious Nari Shakti Puraskar 2018 by the President of India for her contribution to the field of animal welfare advocacy. Adding to her credit, she was awarded the Distinguished Alumni Award in the field of animal welfare advocacy by Lucknow University and the Outstanding Animal Protection Award from the Humane Society International at Kansas City, USA in the year 2018. She is also a recipient of the Lush Prize 2017 in London for her contribution towards reducing unnecessary use of animals in laboratories. Welcome you, ma'am. I would also like to extend my heartiest welcome to our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Uttaranchal University and Dean Law College, Dehradun, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, and a hearty welcome to our Principal, Ma'am, Professor Dr. Poonam Rawat, and a cordial welcome to all the participants. Now, I would like to request our Dean Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, to give the welcome address. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bhuneshwari. On the occasion of this national webinar on topic rights and law relating to animals, today's chief guest and keynote speaker, Honorable Union Minister Srimati Menka Gandhi ji, a co-speaker Ms. Gauri Moleki ji, Principal of Law College Dehradun, Professor Poonam Rawat, host of the day, Dr. Bhuneshwari, President, Secretary, and all the office bearer of Moot Court Society of Law College Dehradun, Uttaranchal University, the society which is responsible to organize this wonderful webinar. Faculty members, dear participant, around 700, more than 700 participants on the board from this university, other university in India and abroad. I wish to extend my greetings to all of you. I am also taking this privilege to welcome you all on the behalf of Uttaranchal University. I welcome you. Thank you, ma'am. I welcome you from the Devbhoomi, Uttarakhand. You all are welcome in this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, these last 4 months of pandemic and particularly of lockdown have been the saddest period of our lives, particularly teachers. The teachers, he loves to be amongst the students all the time. And the bad part of this, our students are at home. No doubt, we are in touch through this electronic media. But Uttaranchal University, before 2 months, decided to convert this saddest period in opportunity. And we have launched a campaign with the help of our student bodies like the Moot Court Society, Legal Aid Center, Debating Society, Youth Parliaments, Vasundhara the Green Society and some other student bodies to launch this campaign to make use of this period in the sense that there are certain issues, even in law and otherwise, which are normally either not discussed in the classroom or discussed very less. So before this, we have taken the topic like alternative dispute resolution system to make the people of the country aware that the time has come then we have to think an alternative of court for the so many regions. And I'm very happy to announce that more than 34 speakers from India and abroad with specialization on this topic, including the judges from Honorable Supreme Court and barristers from United Kingdom. They have spoken, and the students in thousands from this university and other university have been benefited with that. But now the time has come when we have to discuss certain points on laws related to animals. And above the law, ladies and gentlemen, in classroom, in colleges, we can teach laws. But I understand the most important part is to sensitize the people about the animal rights, particularly our students, particularly youth. And to justify that, nobody can be the best personality other than the senior most member of parliament, 8 terms, union minister of women and children, who has been actively and in meaningful way proactive in the matters related to POSCO Act, female infanticides, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan, and in particular to sensitize judicial magistrate. And the fruits of our efforts are before us, that the Bar Council of India has taken animal laws as one of the elective subjects in the curriculum provided for the law graduates. And she is none other than Shrimati Menka Gandhi ji. Madam, on the behalf of Uttaranchal University, I welcome you in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Professor.
और यकीन मानिए, all the students, they were trying since long that at least one time, ma'am should be in Dehradun physically, in Law College Dehradun, Uttaranchal University. This is your college, and I would love if you bless my student sometime.
I would be happy to come, Professor Sir. It's a wonderful college with a great reputation. And I very rarely do webinars, but I'm honored and privileged that you invited me.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. We have our co-speaker with us, Gauri Mauleki, Miss Gauri Mauleki. See, we have already gone through her CV, but the best part of it, which will make her presence meaningful here today amongst the law students, that is, she has undertaken series of workshops to sensitize judicial officers who are going to become judicial officer even in the National Judicial Academy Bhopal and in series of Judicial Academy of States.
That's right.
And ma'am, you have given that leadership of the people for animal in her hand. We are highly satisfied, and she will be able to justify the legal part of it. Mauleki ma'am, we welcome you on the behalf of Uttaranchal University. You are welcome here. So now I will not take much of the time, and over to Bhubaneswari. We want to listen, ma'am. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you. Now, may I request Srimati Menaka Gandhi, ma'am, to begin the session technically and share her expertise on the topic. Ma'am, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored that the Vice Chancellor himself should be here. And I would like to thank all of you, the Principal, Dr. Rawat, Dr. Bhubaneswari, and all the students that are watching. I'm not going to speak for a very long time because I want Gauri to explain each of the laws. And I hope that you're going to let the students ask questions which are specific. What I'm going to tell you is, why is this important? You know, a long time ago, there was a survey in America. And the survey said, who brings change in environmental studies? Who brings change in environmental policy? And they said, is it a group of people? Is it dharnas? Is it agitations? Is it mass movements? Is it signatures? Or is it one person in the right place at the right time? And the answer was that 97% of all change in environmental policy in America had been brought about by one person in the right place at the right time, not by movements. That changed my life, this survey. This I read 30 years ago. And what I did was try to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And that involved a huge amount of study. Why I am addressing you all today is because you are going to be the right people in the right places at the right time. Whether you are lawyers, whether you are judges, whether you are teachers, you can change India immediately. It takes thousands of hours for people to get together and make a movement. It takes 1 minute for a studied person, a person with compassion, intelligence, and wisdom, to change a policy which is clearly not correct. Now, the second question we come to is, why is animal policy at all important to look at? Why do we ask law colleges to adopt it? Why have you adopted it? And why do so many students opt for it? Well, one thing is that no animal is less than vital to our well-being. We think we look after dogs, for instance. और जो सबसे ज़्यादा चेचे होता है वो कुत्तों के ऊपर होता है. ज़्यादा कुत्ते हैं, कम कुत्ते हैं, काटते हैं, क्लासेस के अंदर घूमते हैं. Every day I get 200 to 300 of these debates on this. People who don't like them, people who want to feed them. The point is, what is the dog there for? I will give you just one answer out of the many. A dog is a scavenger. The dog is a scavenger who lives not on your feeding and my feeding, but because he catches rats. Rats are scared of him. The rats live underground, and there are millions of them. 2 rats become 36,000 in 1 year. So if they were to come above ground, we would have the bubonic plague. Now, what happened in one case, just one case, you're probably before you were born, but when the Vice Chancellor and I were young, the city of Surat got a commissioner who decided to kill all the dogs. So within 2 weeks, unhone muhim chalai, and within 2 weeks, he had killed every single dog in Surat. Now, nobody said anything. Ek chota sa shahar, kahan? Within 2 weeks of him killing all the dogs, the rats had come out. They had no predators. They were all over the city, itne itne bade, and they were biting people. There were 2 cases of bubonic plague immediately, and that plague spread was feared all over India. Tourists stopped coming. We suffered an economic decline. We were roaming around with the same masks. If you do remember, and Bashasa Sab, there was a big panic. And why? Because in one city, they had killed the dogs. So we don't look after dogs. They don't live because you and I feed them one roti each. They live because they protect us. The second thing is that you take anything, you take snakes. Why snakes? Let's just take wild boar. Because in Uttarakhand, there's always some demand ki wild boar ko maro, wild boar ko maro. Now let me tell you about wild boar. The most important animal in the entire jungle is wild boar. Why? For two reasons. One, they are the biggest seed spreaders because they keep scratching the earth, they keep eating things and putting the seed somewhere else. But more importantly, there is a kind of fern. There's a plant in the forest called bracken. And these are huge, big leaved ferns, and they prevent the sunlight from coming and to the ground, and so nothing can grow. The wild boar are the only creatures in the world that eat bracken. So when they eat bracken, the forest floor then is allowed to grow seeds. So the minute you remove the wild boar, who is also the food for many predators like tigers, leopards, lions, if you remove the food, all these predators come out of the jungle. And when they come out of the jungle, they start attacking cattle, people, and then we have a problem. So to declare them as vermin or to kill them is foolish. In almost every case where people have had to declare a tiger man-eater, it has been because the wild boar have been killed, and then the tiger had no food, so he came out and started killing. Last month, this happened in Pathanamthitta, where they killed, 2 months ago, they killed all the wild boar. Last month, the tiger became a man-eater. And the tiger was killed. So when we talk about any animal, you talk about snakes. You kill the snakes. Uska natija kya hua? Aapke sare silos mein choohe bhare. The choohas are eating 25% of the cereal that you have put for poor people. Nothing you do can remove them from there. If you had snakes, you would have put them there, they would have contained them. But you have removed the snakes. So ab aapka khana bhi unke saath saath chala gaya. And that to 25%. Koi chota mota nahi. If you had that much more grain, your prices would fall. More people could get food free or at rates that were cheap. But no, you didn't. By removing just the snake, you have created this crisis. So the vultures, when the vultures died, nobody said anything. But the vultures died because you were feeding something called diclofenac to the cattle. Why were you feeding diclofenac, which is a painkiller? Because the cattle, you overuse them. Most of them have got cancer, including the milk-giving ones. Most of them have tuberculosis. They have diseases like ketosis. And because you want to keep using them, in spite of their ill health, you give them painkillers. When they die, the painkillers went into the meat. When the vultures ate the meat, the eggs became soft. So when the vultures sat on them, the eggs crushed और प्रजाति ही खत्म हो गई. अब नतीजा क्या हुआ उसका? नतीजा ये हुआ है कि हर गांव में जब जानवर मरता है, उसकी लाश को कोई कुछ नहीं करता है. You don't bury cow carcasses. So they lie there. All the ants, not the ants, the bottle flies come, other insects come. It starts stinking. It becomes a public health problem. And that then you throw into the water. So नतीजा क्या होता है? केवल vultures की जाने से, because otherwise they would have cleaned the carcass in 15 minutes. आपने हर गांव में खतरा पैदा किया है. So what I'm trying to say to you is, every animal supports you, every single animal. The elephants, last month, 37 elephants were killed. There are less than 10,000 left, and there are only 800 tuskers, or maybe less, because last month another 5-6 were killed. When the elephants die, you will lose the bale tree. The bale tree is the only tree that can cure gastroenteritis. You will lose the elephant apple. You will lose over 150 trees. Is that what you want? Because that will make your life poorer, especially the lives of people who depend on natural herbs and fruits for medicine. So when we talk about going to law colleges, you have to understand the basics of it. I'm not going to teach you the law. That Gauri will do, and you will ask her the questions. We are in the process of developing the law every day. And every day we have been lucky that judges and lawyers all over India have come forward into this new area, and they give their services for free. Yesterday alone, I was remembering your Honorable Justice Rajiv Sharma, I think, who gave that amazing judgment in which he declared animals as sentient beings and worthy of human regard as humans. So you are going to be the people who develop attitudes, much more than politicians, much more than parliament. Every time I have to toko somebody, especially societies which are mean to animals within the gated community, I always use High Court and Supreme Court judgments, because those are now so readily available, and I thank your community very much for that. So I'm just trying to lay the grounds for why you should do it, not what you do, but why you do it. If we just simply understand that we are sitting on the branch, the tree of which is created by the animal, and the moment we are mean to it, the moment we are indifferent to their living, we will lose. Now, let's give you one example. Sparrows went away. All of us said, oh, choti si, nanni si chiriya thi, chali gaye, hi, mera dil dukta hai, and it became a dil and an emotional matter. You are now under threat from locusts. If the sparrow was there, they would have contained the locusts. Now you have no bird who will eat locusts, no bird who will jujo with them. So what do you have to do? You have to pay the Indian Air Force to spray pesticide in the locust areas. And wherever that pesticide falls is where you and I are going to get poisoned to death, especially when it falls into the water bodies. So ek nanni si chidiya ke jaane se, you and I are going to get now poisoned by pesticides because we have no natural defenses. So there is no emotional love matter when it comes to Menka Gandhi जानवरों को बहुत प्यार करती है. मेनका गांधी आपको, अपने आप को और अपने बच्चों को बहुत प्यार करती है. इसीलिए वो कहती है कि जानवरों को रखो, नहीं तो जीने लायक ही नहीं हम रहेंगे. And that is why law colleges are our jad, are the seed for all change.
बहुत मैम, बहुत अच्छा है. मुझे जो सबसे अच्छी बात ये लगी है कि आपने एक बात कही है एंड यू हैव गिवन रैशनैलिटी बिहाइंड दैट. नॉर्मली जब व्हेन वी स्टार्ट सेंसिटाइजिंग समवन वी जस्ट से कि ये अच्छा है, बट बीइंग अ प्रोफेसर आई कैन से कि दिस इज द बेस्ट पार्ट ऑफ दैट. और आपके अंदर भी कहीं ना कहीं कोई प्रोफेसर बैठे हुए हैं, टीचर. जिस तरीके से आपने रैशनैलिटी दी कि आज के यूथ के दिमाग में ये बात आ रही है कि व्हाई वी शुड डू इट. सो वंस यू हैव रिलेटेड व्हाई स्नेक, व्हाई डॉग्स, व्हाई एलिफेंट्स, व्हाई ऑल दिस, then when we give answer to this why, I think no question remain after that. Thank you, ma'am. Abhi, let us see.
Thank you, Rashastra.
The greatest gift you can give someone is your time. Thank you, ma'am, for your precious time and throwing light on the importance of animals in the food chain of ecosystem. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Beta. Now you're going back, sending you over to Gauri.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our second keynote speaker, Ms. Gauri Moleki, to continue with the session. Ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Bahuguna. Thank you, Dr. Rawat, Dr. Bhuvneshwari, for hosting this today. I can't stress how important it is for young budding lawyers and future jurists to actually understand the essence of animal rights and animal welfare statutes that we have in this country. And we are, I'm happy to say, one of the leaders in the world in making amazing laws somewhere we get left behind in enforcement, but we have a wonderful set of laws. And with awareness sessions such as this, and with more and more aware people, professionals in the field, we'll see a lot better future for our environment and animals. I'm also especially happy that animal law is being given as a choice subject in the Doon Law College, and that's really important because I remember about a decade ago in Uttarakhand, I was hoping to challenge the ill practice of animal sacrifice in Nainital High Court. And for shortage of a lawyer, there was not a single person who would be happy to or confident enough in the law to appear in such a case. I had to represent myself. And I'd say that saved me a lot of money. And finally, we did win that case, and a wonderful judgment was given. But at that time, I realized that it's very important. Like we have law firms which are dedicated to environment law, but we have very few that are actually working on animal rights and animal protection. So Mrs. Gandhi has given the entire overview of why these laws are important. I'll just cut to the chase and come to what exactly are the statutes which are most relevant in India. One might think that Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960, which has never been amended and never been revised, is all that we have, but that's hardly so. It's one of the bedrock. It's the omnibus act that we have that protects animals. It has its roots, of course, in Article 51AG of the Constitution, Article 48A of the Constitution. But most importantly, it is important because of its, the objective of the Act, which was basically made after revision of the earlier 1860 Act. The 1860 Act of Prevention of Cruelty was basically sort of a welfare act. Looked at animals as property, looked at animals as something of some worth, and causing any kind of nuisance, causing any kind of cruelty to them would be a sort of a nuisance for people around. So no cruelty could be caused in public. That was the essence of the act, and no property of any person like a cow or an elephant or a buffalo could be destroyed by anybody. However, when PCA Act came, and it is also a very interesting story, there's an MP of Tamil Nadu called Mrs. Rukmani Devi Arundale, who brought it as a private member bill in the parliament. And she said that the time has come that we, put our money where our mouth is. Basically, the culture of ahimsa in India has to be translated into a statute, and let's have a Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, imposing a duty upon every citizen of India to look after animals in their environment and to ensure that unnecessary pain and suffering is not caused on any animal. This, at that time, by the Honorable Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, was taken in as a bill which was then later passed by the Ministry of Agriculture. And it became law. Section 3 of this law is perhaps really, really important, and that's the basis of several Supreme Court pronouncements where the duty of every citizen has been defined. You need to, read it to understand how deep it is and how the jurisprudence actually developed from using animals as property to becoming sort of guardians of animals. And in several judicial pronouncements now, courts have also stepped up and described their own duties as being guardians of the mute, the defenseless animals. Hence, this act, from the objective onwards, is very interesting. Again, in the same vein, from being property to becoming something which has a capability of suffering, to becoming a sort of victim. We can see the definition of owner in the act, which is very interesting. Owner is not really the person who has purchased an animal or has, some legal right over an animal, but any person who has the custody of an animal. So that again has very far-reaching legal, situations, such as if an animal has been abducted or stolen. It has the owner then becomes the person who has the custody of animals, and his duty becomes to look after the animal. And Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act would apply if he has inflicted unnecessary pain and suffering on the animal. This act doesn't just cover kicking, beating, which is all in section 11, and I'm sure several of you must have read it, but also covers several other aspects of usage of animals, such as in circuses, in performances, of any other kind. When in 1960 this act was made, there used to be madaris and kalandars and all kinds of people, street performers, magicians pulling rabbits out of their hats and all kinds of things. All that is now in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, and mandates that every performance of the animal has to be registered with the Government of India, with Animal Welfare Board of India. Now this again is a stringent provision, and now only in some films and ads in a very restricted, regulated manner, and in some circuses there is some allowance, and that too the government is in the process of removing animals from circuses as well. The draft notification has been filed and will be amended later. So that is one aspect. Then there's this other aspect, which is usage of animals in laboratories, which is also totally, it was unregulated, and it was thought that for making science profit from usage of animals, making human health go a little far, it's important that any amount of animals can be used. But this act brought about a regulation. There is a body called the CPC-SEA, Committee for the Purpose of Supervision and Control of Experiments on Animals, again with the Government of India, which needs to register every single college, every single laboratory where animals are either used for teaching or for experiments or for testing. So all these aspects of animals in laboratories, and let me tell you, it's a huge number, because after slaughterhouses, laboratories are the second largest killers of animals in the world. So billions of animals across the world, right from mice, rats, hamsters, guinea pigs, fish, dogs of all varieties, cows, sheep, every animal is tested upon, whether it is testing for a cigarette brand, or testing for a shampoo, or testing, some face creams in the eyes of rabbits. All kinds of tests are now regulated through this act. And also this act has been futuristic, as to say that whenever an alternative comes along the way, whenever there is a mannequin or a simulation program or any other scientific method which does not require the use of animals, and that should be replaced with the animal, and animals should be spared. So that way this chapter is also again very important. There are some exceptions in the Act. Now, one might say, and a lot of people ask me that, oh, if we have a Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, then why do we slaughter animals, in slaughterhouses? I mean, that's a layman's question. I'm sure you guys already know the answer to it. But Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act has some exceptions. And these exceptions are definitely with boundaries. Every exception is with a boundary. But one of the exceptions is that animals can be slaughtered for food for mankind unless such a slaughter is accompanied with infliction of unnecessary pain and suffering. Therefore, from that, a set of rules came along, which are called the slaughterhouse rules. And within the parameters of those rules, as regulated by them, slaughter of animals is allowed, despite all our other provisions of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Even during slaughter, the Act says that cruelty cannot be inflicted if it is avoidable. Now, there is some, some more provisions, a lot more provisions, which I'm going to tell you in a moment about slaughter. But this is basically one can say exception. That's important. Another exception regarding slaughter is that the method of slaughter can be decided by the custom of a religion, customary practice of a religion. This was one very memorable argument that we had in the Nainital High Court, where some religious communities came and said that we have under Section 28, we have the authority to kill animals if it is required by the religion of our community, and this is it. So we have a requirement, and we are going to kill them the way we want to. So the argument went on two words only. One was the manner in which the animal has to be killed, and the second was a requirement of the religion. So the manner, however, could be jhatka or halal, but it cannot just forego all the other provisions of the act as to no infliction of unnecessary pain and suffering, stunning the animal, conducting the slaughter in a licensed slaughterhouse, etc. So the manner, only the cut was accepted by the Honorable High Court, and the religious requirement, which had to be a written religious requirement without which the religion would suffer irreparably, or the core of the religion would get hurt. So again, there was no such provision or no such requirement, express requirement, and the Nainital High Court upheld that animal sacrifice, as was conducted in Devbhoomi, Uttarakhand, for about 2 lakh animals every year in huge numbers, and they used to just be hacked to death and thrown from hilltops into valleys. That all stopped about 10 years ago, and thankfully we did a lot of outreach and made far-reaching villages aware of the law, and that's how it worked. Anyway, coming back to the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, the Act itself has just 38 sections. It's written in very simple language, but it left a scope for a lot of rules to be made. So about 15 sets of rules have been made under it for various situations, such as, draft and pack animals like buggies and belgadis, and we have about 20,000 horses going up and down the Char Dham, for which again the matter is before the Nainital High Court, where there has to be some minimum welfare ensured even for those 20,000 animals. So draft and pack animals rules comes in very handy, which lays down how much weight animals can carry. If it's an incline, how much they can, how much weight they can carry, whether each animal has to be fit to work, if it is employed in any kind of work, etc. Similar cases are also pending under this very rule in the Supreme Court, where it comes to animals used in Vaishno Devi for going up and down the track, again with pilgrims. So there's a Kerala High Court judgment which is very interesting regarding this rule, where some 20,000 donkeys were being used in Sabrimala in the Periyar Tiger Reserve, and Kerala High Court ruled that these donkeys either should be maintained using some minimum standards, ensuring the treatment and welfare of these donkeys, or they should not be used at all. So finally, they were removed from the Periyar Tiger Reserve, and currently there are no donkeys employed there because of the Kerala High Court judgment. So that's one set of rules. Then there is a set of rules for performing animals. Registration rules lays down how every film, whenever we see these films and they have used some animals, they come up with a tagline, "No animal has been harmed while shooting for this film." So this tagline basically comes after the censorship board refers the film to the Animal Welfare Board of India, and the Animal Welfare Board of India is checked as per the performing animals registration rules, and ensured that no animal was actually harmed, and the shooting was done without inflicting unnecessary pain and suffering, or to do any unnatural acts. No unnatural acts were conducted on the animals, and then they are finally given a green signal and a censorship certificate. The best thing is that now they're using a lot of computer graphics, so they don't even use animals, live animals, really. That's the future. That's how it should be. In fact, even for slaughterhouses, the future is lab-grown meat and vegan meat, which is now catching up. It's just been introduced into India. So once that comes up, the animal slaughter will become a thing of the past, and maybe some of our children's children are going to look back and say, "Oh, those days people used to cut up animals and eat them." So this is all going to become archaic at some point, and we are going to evolve into a society that does not inflict any pain on any animal. However, coming back to the rules, there's another set of rules which is very important that Mrs. Gandhi also spoke about briefly. The animal birth control rules. And I'll be happy to share with you, I'm a member of the Uttarakhand Animal Welfare Board and several committees in the Uttarakhand government. We've been very successful at setting up animal birth control program in Dehradun. And some of you might have come from other states, but if you are from Dehradun, if you're acquainted, you can go to behind Doon College, there is Doon University, sorry. There is an animal birth control center which has such amazing, wonderful protocols as per the Animal Birth Control Rules 2001, promulgated under PCA Act, that the Supreme Court took this model and asked all the states in the country to emulate it. Now, most of the states have been sending their teams to visit our Animal Birth Control Center, which is being run very, very well as per the rules. Very important to have your urban areas, especially where there's a lot of solid waste and the disposal is not done in a responsible, proper manner, to catch hold of dogs in a humane manner, to surgically sterilize them, neuter them, spay them, and send them back into the same place, leave them into the same place from where they were picked up. So this process was done in a haphazard manner across the country since 2001. It's only in Dehradun that in 2018 we were able to set up this program in a manner which is absolutely effective and sticks to law. Anybody who would like to go and volunteer there is most welcome. This rule has been challenged number of times in number of high courts, and the Supreme Court has again and again, in fact 4 times, held that dogs need to be treated exactly as per the Animal Birth Control Rules 2001. No deviation from it. In fact, the court in SLP number 691 of 2009, the Supreme Court has gone to the extent of saying that people need not be innovative in their approach to dealing with the dogs, because this has already been laid down by the Parliament for the entire country and must be followed. The letter of law must be followed as is. I'll just give you a brief background. These set of rules, the Animal Birth Control Rules 2001, were just not made by the Parliament. Like nobody just thought it up and made it. These are based on a WHO report of year 2000, when they came up, the WHO came up with a plan, with a sustainable and suitable plan for controlling street dog population in all developing countries where there is a solid waste disposal problem, and there are a large number of scavengers, dogs, cats, civets, you name it. So all of these animals can, were in the time of the British Raj, they used to be killed, and we know all of us know some place or the other. Earlier there used to be a sign, no, Indians and dogs not allowed. Even in Mussoorie, on the Mall Road, it used to be that Indians and dogs not allowed. So during the British, they used to kill the dogs all the time. But did that end the dogs? Did that decimate their population? No, it did not. Because whenever we have protein available on our roads in the form of garbage, there will be some scavenger or other which will come and have it. And today there's dogs. Tomorrow it could be a more inconvenient species, like Mrs. Gandhi said. It could be rats. In Kerala, they killed a large number of dogs, and suddenly the mongoose population became really, really high. So we need to deal with them as per law, because the law is based in science. That's what my point was, that animal birth control rules are not only based on the WHO report, but they've also been mandated by the Supreme Court after thorough hearing. The matter is still ongoing because the court is monitoring the implementation of these rules. Another set of rules which is interesting and which has lately come up in 2017 and 18 are the dog breeding and marketing rules and the pet shop rules. An interesting story regarding this is that the Law Commission of India was actually looking at matters related to animal trade, and a huge number of organizations started writing to the Law Commission asking for this trade to be somehow regulated, because so far, up until 2017, pet trade and animals got in, trade like birds and dogs and cats and guinea pigs and rabbits. It was not regulated at all. People could just sell whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted. They would not give receipts. They would not come under GST or any other taxation regime. They would simply not even, there are some animals that are protected under the CITES. CITES is a treaty, international treaty that we have signed for protection of endangered species. But since we don't have a law in India to penalize CITES violations, these people would even sell CITES protected animals, such as, say, lemur monkeys from Africa, or orangutan babies, or chimpanzees, which are smuggled in through the Nepal border and then sold maybe in Kavli Road, So all kinds of violations were noticed, and therefore the Law Commission of India came up with a report asking the government of India to consider making a set of rules for regulation of these pet shops and dog breeding establishments, because on one hand, the government has the responsibility of neutering, spaying dogs, because we've got about 4 crore dogs in this country, and we're all, all the states are struggling to reduce their population. On the other side, there are these dogs which are being bred indiscriminately, and a lot of diseases are spread, and a lot of customers are cheated. Nobody's getting any receipts. Parvo, distemper spreading through these dirty, filthy puppy mills. So finally, it was considered by the government of India. In 2017, the dog breeding and marketing rules came up, and in 2018, the pet shop rules came up. Both these rules require the State Animal Welfare Board to register such establishments before they allow them to function. Moreover, it was also mandated that these state animal welfare boards do regular inspections, ensure that there's no cruelty happening, the detailed guidelines in both these sets of rules. Then you have the case property animals rules and the livestock market rules. These were also made by the instructions of the Honorable Supreme Court in a matter which dealt with animal smuggling. These two sets of rules are also notified by the central government under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, also regulating aspects which were totally unregulated so far. So these are major rules under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which are both interesting and very relevant, and each was made with a very specific intent, because animals, we know, are used in every aspect of our life, whether it is food or clothing or construction or transportation. It's just everywhere, medicines, cosmetics, you name it. But this act provides a lot of relief for them. Then you have the Wildlife Protection Act. I will not go into much detail, but Wildlife Protection Act is basically applicable to all Indian wildlife. It's called the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, and the animals which are in the 4 schedules of the Wildlife Protection Act are the only ones that it protects. There are 4 schedules, 1, 2, 3, 4, and every state wants to put wild boar and monkey and nilgai into the schedule 5, which is the vermin schedule, and which basically means that Wildlife Protection Act will not protect them anymore. Hunting, the definition of hunting in Wildlife Protection Act is very interesting. You must read it. Hunting is not just taking a banduk and going to the jungle and doing thai to the animals. It is also about laying a trap, or even any attempt to lay a trap, or touching the nest of a wild bird. That's enough. If you disturb the nest of a wild bird, Section 9, which prohibits hunting, can apply. You will find Section 40 and 42 of the Wildlife Protection Act very interesting, which are about the recent controversy about temple elephants and elephants used in private captivity, are all subject to Section 40 and 42 of the Wildlife Protection Act, where it says that if you have any wild animal in your custody, Indian wild animal in your custody, you need to have permission from the Chief Wildlife Warden. You need to declare these animals way back in 1972, 3 months were given. And then in 2003, a 6-month amnesty was given. So that's it. During that time, if you've had an elephant, you can declare it, obtain an ownership certificate and continue keeping them. However, later on, after 2003, nobody can acquire new wild animals at all from the wild. There is absolutely no provision in law for that. And from time to time, it can also be reviewed whether 42 has basically a little proviso which says that, you know, the ownership certificate would be given if you have the relevant provisions and the resources to maintain such a wild animal. So we've seen in the past few years a lot of begging elephants in Chhattisgarh, in Maharashtra, in Delhi. A lot of elephants, in fact, even in Ramnagar, a lot of elephants just made to stand on the roadside and people begging with the help of these elephants, asking people for 100, 200 rupees to get a selfie with them, etc. So these provisions are used to remove all those elephants. I'm proud to say that my Uttarakhand does not have any private captive elephants anymore, and nor does Delhi. But a lot of states such as Rajasthan, Kerala, Chhattisgarh are struggling with private captive elephants, where people who don't have the means and resources to actually keep these elephants are not only keeping them but using them commercially, which is not provisioned for in the Wildlife Protection Act. You will find that WLP has some provisions for making statutory bodies such as the National Tiger Conservation Authority, the Central Zoo Authority. These are basically specific bodies of the central government working with the Ministry of Environment and Forest that lay down framework for instance, NTCA manages the Project Tiger. All tiger reserves, our own Corbett Tiger Reserve, Rajaji Tiger Reserve, they all come under the NTCA as well, and are funded by them, are regulated by them, special set of rules apply to them. And the Central Zoo Authority, which has all the zoos registered with them, and the Central Zoo Authority recognition rules lay down how much, what are the minimum standards for each zoo to be followed. In Dehradun, there's a Malsi Deer Park. It's a middle-level zoo registered with the Central Zoo Authority, and hopefully it follows the recognition rules. It also runs a rescue center for wild animals. So I remember sending a lot of reptiles and wild birds, raptors, egrets that get hurt or something, or get dehydrated during the summer or something, to that place, because that wildlife rescue center is run at Malsi. Not going deeper into the Wildlife Protection Act and waiting for questions on that, I'll just now give you a brief overview that these are not the only acts that use that protect animals. There's several other acts. The IPC has so many sections that apply to animals, such as section 429 and 428. Again, in the concept of property, because 428 says any animal worth less than rupees 50, and 429 says more than rupees 50. So basically it's about how much is the animal for. It's again the concept of property that came into it. But the good thing is that section 429 is a cognizable section, while most sections of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act are not cognizable, other than some parts of section 11 and section 12. Which are cognizable. Section 429 is generally used liberally by the police, because that much they understand. Whether they understand the PCA Act or not, IPC is always very easy for the police to understand. So they always include this section while writing FIRs against, in any animal crime situation. There is a Food Safety and Standards Act, which is very important. One might intuitively think that it's got nothing to do with animals, but if you look at the Food Safety and Standards Act's licensing regulations of 2011, you will find that Chapter 4 is all about animals. It's in fact so much about animals that it lays down how an animal should be handled while it's being transported to a slaughterhouse, what care to take to avoid infliction of unnecessary pain and suffering during the slaughter. Very detailed provisions, much more detailed than the PC Act or the slaughterhouse rules, are in these licensing regulations of Food Safety and Standards Act. Again, mandated by the Honorable Supreme Court in one of the slaughterhouse cases. for ensuring that there is no cruelty happening to slaughter animals even. So this is an important act which applies to animals, not intuitively, but if there is a neighborhood chicken khoka, where somebody is sitting with murgi urgi and it's just slaughtering on demand, well, the Food Safety and Standards Act applies more than anything else, because it's all like One Health concept of the Indian government. This is all basically one world concept. You cannot alienate animal welfare from human health. You cannot alienate it from the environmental aspects. You cannot alienate it from the Water Act and Air Act and Environment Protection Act. It's all interconnected. So the concept is that you use the heaviest sections, the heaviest law available to you. And in the case of slaughter, we always find the Food Safety and Standards Act calling this person, whoever is irresponsibly or brutally slaughtering animals not as per regulations, to be penalized as a food business operator under the Food Safety and Standards Act rather than anything else. But all other conditions apply. I would be happy, Dr. Bahuguna, I'd be happy to share some material which can be perhaps circulated with your students, some Supreme Court orders and some important compendiums that we made for the court. Yeah. And it would be used as a resource material for them,
lot of research
and further questions also.
Lot of research is going on, so it will be helpful for them.
Absolutely. Then there are provisions under the Motor Vehicles Act which talk about animal transportation, such as if animals are to be transported in a certain vehicle, then that vehicle has to be registered as an animal carrier and should meet certain minimum standards as to how much space to be given for every animal and how the ramp has to be made and what precautions to be taken. There's also the Arms Act, where in 2016 the rules came out which mandated the use of, mandated the licensing or the registration of air weapons. We've seen in a lot of cases, especially on TikTok, and thankfully it's banned, TikTok and all these social media, Instagram channels, we've seen lately in Indore and in Hyderabad, people just randomly going to their terraces and shooting down animals. Now, this is very easily done by people who have air weapons, which don't require any registration or anything. So there's no fear in their minds to misuse such weapons. Nobody would misuse a licensed firearm, but an air weapon is has a propensity of being misused very often. And we saw that in several cases, which is why in 2016 the MHA came up with this set of regulations asking for air weapons also to be registered, and if found to be misused, that registration would be revoked and penalty imposed. There are several other acts from situation to situation we keep using, but rather than lecturing you on it, it's I think it'll be better if I can take some questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for throwing light on the rights related to animal welfare and various aspects, the regulations related to slaughtering of animals, dog breeding rules, pet shop rules, etc., and several other major rules. Now, with your permission, I would like to move on to the question answer session, ma'am. We have several inquisitive questions from our enthusiastic participants. The first one is one from Ms. Aditi. Ma'am, bullfighting, fox hunting, and whale hunting, and many other such practices are part of some countries' traditions and are sometimes even linked with religious practices. In such a situation, what should prevail? The animal protection rights or the right to religion? Could you please clarify on this point?
Yeah. Basically, the concept is that after law has been codified, the religious practices can't overrule codified law. Codified law always trumps any customary or religious practice, especially if the religious practice is against the environment or against welfare or against basic humanitarianism. So I do agree that certain countries have very regressive practices. The dog meat trade in China, for instance, or the whale killing in Japan. But we can only speak about our own religious practices, where we are still struggling with Jallikattu and cockfighting and bullfighting and bull fighting, for God's sake. There's something called a bull fighting in Assam, where in temples they make bulbuls fight with each other, tie some blade on the leg of one bulbul, and basically both of them end up dying. Himachal has a problem of buffalo fighting. Punjab has a problem of dog fighting. All these fightings are cognizable offences under Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Cannot be allowed. However, claiming some customary traditional things, practices, they are sort of given state sanctions, and currently the matter has been agitated before the Supreme Court, and it is to be heard by by the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court. What we have done well is, for instance, there was a lot of seal killing in Canada. Baby seals were clubbed to death with baseball bats, and a huge amount of cruelty was happening as a country. The country as a whole was indulging in a lot of cruelty. So the Indian government stopped the import of any seal or seal products into India, just to minimize that cruelty, and to make a point before the World Trade Organization also that this kind of barbaric cruelty by Canada will not be acceptable, because our ethics and our ethical grounds in India, our provisions in our constitution don't allow.
Ms. Mari, this is the constitution jurisprudential question, and if you permit, I would like to add to it.
Yes, sir.
See, I do not know he is from a student who is asking from India or abroad. So the basic jurisprudential concept is that well-established usage and custom, they overweight the written test of law. Sometimes it is given in Manu Smriti also. But the important point is to see a custom, whether it is a valid custom or not. One has to declare it under certain criteria. And the criteria is antiquity, continuity, and one of the most important criteria is it should not be in contravention with the state policy, or it should not be against the legal provision. And one more thing, if above this, one of the criteria is reasonableness.
Correct.
And the reasonableness is a concept which keep on changing.
Yes.
The thing which is reasonable today may become unreasonable tomorrow, and the thing which is unreasonable tomorrow, it may become reasonable today. So when we weigh it on the standard of reasonableness, so if it is a custom and the custom is not valid custom, it will not help. Like the judgment of Honorable Mr. Justice Rajiv Sharma, Honorable Minister Menka Gandhi ji have just stated it. So it comes like that only. So written test of law will prevail. That was it was.
That's right. That's right. And that's basically our argument in the Supreme Court also, in the matter where Jallikattu or bullfighting or all of these customs are being claimed as being valid customs and centuries old customs, without which the religion would lose its meaning. These are the arguments precisely that have been put forward. And they are also dealt with very, very well in the AWBI versus Nagaraja judgment of Justice Radhakrishnan, which is again a very landmark judgment of 2014. I'd like to share that. It's a long judgment, but it's been quoted widely, and it is actually the first judgment where personhood was bestowed upon animals, or the government was basically asked to consider to read Section 3 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act with Article 21 of the Constitution, saying that it's the right of a person to live in an environment where cruelty does not happen. That is basically the interpretation that was indicated by Justice Radhakrishnan. And certainly we're getting there. It's, After that, we've had 3 or 4 more judgments on personhood, which are very relevant, and read together makes a good case for the government to now frame a policy in the same direction.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us on this query. The next question is from Raman Sharma. What strategy should be taken for rehabilitation of abandoned stray animals?
Well, the strategy, abandoned stray, the 2 words are contradictory. If it is stray, then it's a street animal. You cannot rehabilitate it or put it in a. It's definitely illegal to catch all the street animals and put them in a place like, for instance, lately Jodhpur has done. They've collected 250 dogs from the road and they've put them in a boundary wall, and they're now killing each other because they don't have enough food, and dogs are territorial animals. So you cannot really put them all in one shelter, much as what, we get a lot of calls saying, oh, you must have a lot of shelters and some nice happy farm where you can take all the animals. It's not even allowed by law. And it's not practical, not sustainable. You can't put 4 crores animals in shelters. The good thing is to discourage the puppy mills, to discourage the breeding, to discourage the pet shops, and to encourage adoption of street animals. If they are adopted into homes, if 1 out of 10 people in this country take in 1 animal from the street, there will be no street animals. So if we can give a boost to the adoption of Indian dogs, and Indian dogs are better as pets because they require much less medication. They are almost the most healthy dogs in our given environment because they are suitably acclimatized. They are intelligent, they are beautiful, and they would be grateful to get a home if one is just picked up from the road. And they make perfect pets, they make perfect guard dogs. So that, I think, is the best strategy. If each home could adopt an Indian pet, if RWAs can start adopting pets in their communities, that would be the best way. But otherwise, you cannot just remove them and put them in one place, because that has been tried, tested, it's failed, and now it's been also termed as illegal through several High Court judgments, and also as per the Animal Birth Control Rules 2001. You cannot remove them. Territorial animals need to stay in their own places. They can only be adopted by individuals.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, can we file a case against pet shops as they keep animals in small cages and practice forceful breeding of dogs and sell them at high prices?
You have to exhaust your remedies with the state government and the district administration first. So read the Pet Shop Rules 2018. If you find that a certain pet shop is violating those rules, the basic minimum is that they hang a registration certificate, in the shop in a very prominent place. That's mandatory as per the rules. So if you enter a pet shop and if it's not hanging, if you don't find such a registration certificate hanging, then straight away you need to inform the district SPCA or even the local police and also the State Animal Welfare Board, which is the regulatory authority under the pet shop rules. If it is registered, then you need to check if the minimum standards prescribed in the rules are being met or not. If they are not being met, again, you can raise a complaint with the State Animal Welfare Board in the manner prescribed. The pet shop owner will also then have an option to appeal any decision of the State Animal Welfare Board. Once that process, as laid down in the rules, has been exhausted, the matter would come to an end. If it is a large-scale, rampant violation, then it may be agitated before a higher court, but the onus would be on the petitioner to actually demonstrate that such large-scale inaction on the part of the State Animal Welfare Board is happening and that the government isn't doing anything. So first, I said, before going to court in any way possible, just exhaust your remedies so that you're able to demonstrate to the court that action is required and their time is required on such a matter.
Thank you, ma'am, for your crystal clear answer.
Next question. in Uttarakhand, again, Justice Rajesh Sharma gave a very good pet shop order. In 2018, December, November, he gave an order on my petition saying that all pet shops which are not registered must be shut down in 15 days' time. And the State Animal Welfare Board since then has been a little active. In fact, recently during the lockdown, the Animal Welfare Board of India came up with an order saying that all, and you'll find these orders on my Twitter handle or Facebook page. I can also send them to you. The Animal Welfare Board of India said any pet shop or dog breeder which is not registered must not reopen. And the same order has been given by the state of Uttarakhand as well, and all other states. In fact, all states of the country have now given orders that they should not reopen. So use those orders to get unregistered pet shops and dog breeders shut down. If you fail at that, escalate, and at some point you might have to go to court.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a question from Pratyusha. If the act of testing medicines upon the animals to test its effectiveness is a violation of animal rights?
No. Animals are used in 3 ways in laboratories. One, where you're using an animal to impart some education. Like when I was in class 10, we used to dissect fish and frogs and cockroaches and whatever to learn the anatomy in our biology practicals. It was useless. It was done away with. But there are some classes, in fact, it's been done away with in up to graduation level, even in dental colleges, pharmacy colleges, veterinary colleges. Some number of medical colleges still use animals for education purpose, but it's very limited now. The second way they're used is for research. If any research has to be done, animals can be used, but they are regulated as per CPC-SEA rules. CPC-SEA is Committee for the Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiments on Animals, formed under Section 17 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So CPC-SEA rules lay down what are the requirements, and the laboratory has to follow those requirements and register with the CPC-SEA, and then form an internal animals ethics committee, which is the IAEC, and then conduct such research. The third is the using testing, which is used, those laboratories, the testing laboratories can be with companies, with, any brand of manufacturers of cosmetics or food products or anything. That again requires CPC-SEA registration and meeting of minimum standards, but it's not yet illegal. There is in fact some progress that's happened. Now the ICMR is making a center of excellence called NARC on alternatives in Hyderabad, which will then impart education to all laboratories across India as to how to conduct those same very tests, on animals, on whatever research or testing that has to be done without the use of animals, by use of simulation, by use of like 6,000 DNAs can be available on one chip the size of a SIM card, and you don't need 6,000 animals slaughtered to obtain that DNA, stuff like that. So science has progressed a lot when it comes to experimentation. Colleges will whether it's dental, pharmacy colleges, medical colleges, veterinary colleges, are now all required to upgrade. And just like during the lockdown, we've all had to upgrade and learn how to do webinars. In the same way, now they have to upgrade and start using alternatives instead of using live animals, and that would be the future. But currently regulated, it's allowed.
Thank you, ma'am. Vani Kesari has a question. What are the existing regulations on xenotransplantations?
Xenotransplantation systems. Let me get back to you on this one.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Kaushik. What is the rate of conviction in our country for cases involving cruelty against animals?
Sorry, I didn't get that one.
Okay, what is the rate of conviction in our country for cases involving cruelty against animals?
Abysmal. It's so bad that it's not even compiled. We have to file RTIs, which get transferred, from state governments to districts and districts to thanas, and then compilation is done on a 2 yearly basis or something in our offices, but it's really abysmal. In a certain cases, the Supreme Court asked for such data, and remarkably, the conviction rate is higher in the state cow protection acts. It's slightly higher. But under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, when it comes to cruelty to a dog or a cat or a crow or something, the conviction rate is very, very low. Even when FIRs are filed, it's basically during the process of investigation, either the witness turns away or loses interest, or the police is not able to investigate in a proper manner to file a charge sheet even. So the conviction rate is really, really abysmal. We are hoping that with the amendment to Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which is about to come, with all these sections becoming cognizable and the penalties being higher, the act will be taken more seriously. Lately, we've seen it's been 60 years since this act was, passed by the Parliament. It's the 50 rupee penalty has really diminished the importance of the act a lot. While the judiciary has been extremely proactive in helping in such, giving landmark judgments, it's the local thana that thinks that such cases would not be very important. That's majorly due to the low penalties, and that is why we don't see much of a conviction rate.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your lucid points of explanation in clearing the queries. Now, may I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, to deliver the vote of thanks. Sir?
Thank you, Dr. Bhuvneshwari. After such interactive session, the vote of thanks remain merely a formality. Okay. But since you have ordered to do that, now this session is started with Honorable Member of Parliament, Srimati Menka Gandhi ji. She started very interestingly from the right person at right place. And she has taken us to the जानवरों को जीने दो नहीं तो हमारा ही जीना खराब जाएगा. And within this talk, she have touched almost every aspect, and she has not left any stone unturned to sensitize you all youth. And she has given example of whether it is dog, whether it is snake, crow, or elephant, tiger, whatever it is. And she has given, as I told earlier also before her, that she has given rationality why we should protect them, and this is not only for them, it's for us also. So with this, I would like to thank ma'am in absentia, and I understand Ms. Gauri will convey my thanks to her, and from the bottom of my heart. Now, the second speaker. See, I have gone through the entire speech, Ms. Gauri. It looks like a law professor was talking and discussing somewhere. And I know that you have been taking classes and workshops in different judicial academies, because I am fortunate to have my student from Law College, Dehradun, almost in all the judicial academies in northern India. And I'm very proud to say, during last 3 years, we have given 50 judges to the country from your college. Okay.
That's excellent.
So whether you go to Bihar, you go to Uttar Pradesh, you go to Jharkhand, you go to Madhya Pradesh, you go to Himachal Pradesh, in every judicial academy, you will find a student from your own state, from your own college, right? So this is very nice. You are sensitizing them, the youth. But best part of it, Ms. Gauri has taken the legal portion, not only PCA, but rules also, and all the connected acts, wildlife, other acts, even IPC. So she has, and this is, no, it was Gauri speaking, but it was her experience which was speaking. And in the beginning, when you said that you have taken lot of trouble while going for the public interest litigation at Nainital High Court, but I'm sure that like Minta Gandhi ma'am have started, and you have started sensitizing this youth in the college level. So I understand you will get lot of advocates. They will be motivated.
Yes.
And they will be motivated, and there is no lack of any intellectual. Students are very smart, and all these webinars are being organized by the student bodies.
Correct.
Okay, so this is one thing, and since you are in Dehradun and you are member of the Animal Welfare Board also, and there also in near Dun University, that so we will sometime associate with you, and we will take your help for, because the research works are going on here. We are conducting doctorate also in law, so we have proposal to start some research on animal laws also. So because earlier people used to think this is not a wide subject to complete my PhD, but now there are so many things have come, so we can go for that also. So with this, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Namaskar.
And I will not fail to thank Moot Court Society of Law College Dehradun, under whose aegis this webinar is being conducted. So its chairperson, Professor Poonam Rawat, who is also the principal of Law College Dehradun, its entire team, including the president, Ms. Anna Anupriya, who came in the beginning, and Mr. Rahul Sharma, convener, who is behind the scene doing everything, and all the office bearer. You need my thanks, special mention, and my blessing to you all. And today, the host of the day, Dr. V. Bhuvneshwari, she is associate professor in English in Law College Dehradun. She has done it very nicely. Thank you very much. My all the blessings are with you, Dr. Bhuvneshwari. And this webinar, see, surprisingly, I see that around 800 students from across the country and abroad have visited this. And there was series of questions. Bhuvneshwari could not have taken this question for 3 hours, Asim. But the speech of most questions. Now the question remains to ask the question only. So for that and this patience and participation, I thank all the participants. And I promise, as they are writing me again and again, we will have so many eminent speakers, workshops, and webinars. Thank you very much. And last but not the least, everyone who has directly and indirectly contributed to make this webinar successful. Thank you very much on the behalf of Uttaranchal University. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I would like to extend my heartiest gratitude to our dignitaries, Vice Chancellor, sir, Principal ma'am, and our participants for joining us, and a special congratulations to the Moot Court Society of Law College Dehradun and the organizing committee. This global pandemic situation, leading to the biggest lockdown of the century in the history of mankind, has curbed the freedom of movement, yet has opened avenues to improvise technologically in this digital era and grow our mission. This is Dr. Bhuvneshwari, formally concluding the session and signing off. Have a great day.